We have an amazing episode for you today, but first I want to tell you about Anchor, the easiest way to make a podcast. Whether it's recording new podcast episodes, uploading existing episodes, editing, or more, Anchor gives you everything you need in one place to create your podcast from your computer or your phone and make it sound amazing. And the best part, it's free. Yes, Anchor is completely free. Anchor makes it easy to make money with a podcast without a minimum listenership, and will even distribute your podcast so it can be heard anywhere from Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and more. The podcast process has been so easy because of Anchor, and I couldn't have asked for a better experience right off the bat. I'm recommending Anchor to all of my listeners who are wanting to start a podcast. Be sure to download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started building your own podcast today. My name is Kristen Kubik, and you're listening to As Told Unfiltered, the podcast that dives deep into what it's really like running a business. The raw, the real, and the completely unfiltered. Well, hello, beautiful people. Welcome to another episode of the As Told Unfiltered podcast. So, I am going to talk about a subject that's actually really tough for society as a whole to talk about. And that's part of the reason I really wanted to make an episode on this, to kind of bring awareness, but also to actually, dive into what this experience has been like for me, and a lot of people might relate to this. We're talking today about grief and grieving, and honestly the truths about it, because it's something that no one really talks about. And you're probably thinking, why in the world are we talking about this on what's supposed to be a business related podcast? Well, here's the reason. It affects your business a lot from what I'm noticing. And it's, something that people try to push through, me included, and you just can't do it. And if you do, a lot of things are going to get messed up, or they're not going to work out, or your energy is just not there physically, mentally, emotionally. Or, you're just not going to be able to call in the clients or the customers that you're looking for because they can feel something's off. So I want to just kind of dive in and talk about some experiences that I've noticed with grieving. And if you're new here or you don't follow me on social media, let me back up for a little bit. July of 2020, I lost my mom. It was fairly suddenly. She was one of my best friends, and she raised us for the most part as a single mom. So losing her before I even turned 30 was heartbreaking. And it was, I'm still dealing with it, but it's easier now to at least acknowledge the emotions and to deal with the bad days. And then in November of 2020, my great aunt got diagnosed with ALS. And then in January, she died, January 2021. So that was another big hit for, the whole family. But, I was also pretty close to her. She was a fantastic part of my life. And then in December 2020, my dog, my best friend, my golden retriever, she got diagnosed with aggressive T-cell lymphoma. And she died the day after my aunt died in January 2021. So over the course of 7 months, I took a lot of really big hits. And it's a lot to have dealt with. I actually didn't comprehend what just happened until probably early February. And it was something that really was hard. I'd be lying if I said anything else. It was really hard. It was very traumatic. And I say that in the most meaning of that word. And so I'm going to talk about, a lot of my experiences. So the first, truth experience, however you want to put this, about grief that I've been going through that I really noticed is, and everyone tells you this, but dear Lord, you do not understand it until you go through it. It comes in waves. You can go days and days and days and, be fine. And then one day you are hit with a memory or something that reminds you of your person, your pet, whatever, whoever, and then you just lose it. So, for instance, today, I've actually been, I have my bad days, obviously, but I actually, for the most part, have done really well. And today, I got sent a screenshot of a conversation of someone who drew a photo of my dog, Marley. And for the record, I've never seen the movie Marley and Me. Okay, I always have to tell people that. So I got sent a screenshot of a conversation, and it was someone who had drawn a photo, the most beautiful photo of Marley. And she was describing how this photo spoke to her and how it encapsulated every single piece of Marley. And she didn't even know her. And I just started bawling. But it's tiny things sometimes that get you, but it really does come in waves, and it's crazy to me because you can be completely fine and then one little thing just sets you off. And that makes it really hard sometimes to want to go out somewhere, want to do things. Someone put it this way, that your first trip to the grocery store is one of the hardest things you can do because you see something that your person would have eaten, your dog's favorite snack, something like that. And you can just lose it in the middle of the grocery store. My poor grocery store, they've seen me cry 14 times at least. The pharmacy has, everyone has in that grocery store, I think. But these are things that really happen. The next one I want to talk about is that you have all kinds of emotions. There is no one single emotion that you will ever have. There's anger, anxiety, depression, love, nostalgia, grace, so many more. And some days you might experience them all at once. And that's okay. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to feel your emotions. Because the only way to even get through any of this is to actually feel what's happened, what's going on. How are you feeling that day? What are you going through? You don't have to talk about it to anybody but yourself, but you have to acknowledge it because that's the only way you're going to be able to deal with it. And that's something that a lot of people have the hardest time with because we often want to take our emotions and shove them in a box, especially because, one of the big emotions that I felt is overwhelm. All of these emotions happen and you just get so overwhelmed with everything that you don't know what to do with it. So your natural reaction is to shove it in a box. And while sometimes that's okay, if you're in a grocery store, you still have to sometimes acknowledge that way of being, how you're feeling, things like that. Next is that nobody, and I mean nobody, will experience grief the way you do. Some people, they will move through it really fast, or it'll look like they move through it really fast. Some people move through it at what feels like a snail's pace. And sometimes that's how you feel. Some people move through it behind the scenes, never showing the world what they're really going through. And a lot of the times, those are the ones that are suffering the most because they're really afraid to show that vulnerability and ask for the help or ask for the support and things like that. Some move through it really loudly. I'm a person who has moved through it extremely loudly because if I can show people what I'm going through and how I'm handling it, then maybe I'm going to help someone who is going through it or has gone through it re-experience or re-heal their own grief. And I personally choose to take this grief that I'm experiencing and try to use it for a better good. Another truth and a thing I've really experienced about grief is that grief affects your physical body. This is one that I didn't know and I didn't understand until it actually started happening. It affects your fight or flight. It affects your sleep. It affects your ability to eat. It affects your ability to do things that used to never take a lot of energy. It affects your ability to remember things or even speak. You feel so crazy sometimes, but you're not. You are so normal that it's not even funny. The problem is, because no one really talks about it, you feel like you are psychotic and that you're on the verge of a total break and you're gonna end up on an episode of Snapped or be locked away in a mental institution. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But, I mean, it's a very, very scary feeling sometimes. A lot of, ways that it was affecting my physical body, and it still is I'm having a hard time sleeping. And there are so many things that I'm trying and reframing my brain to do, and so many different things, but I still have a hard time some nights. And some nights are worse than others. My body in general, things take a lot more energy. I'm talking triple the amount of energy to even do a load of laundry than it used to. People think it's really abnormal to, need a break or need, something different whenever you've gone through an event, that's traumatic or you're grieving or anything like that. And it's not, because you are just exhausted, because your body is hurting, because your body is using so much more energy than it was, trying to get you back into the quote safe spot that it feels you should be in. So another one that I'm actually having a really hard time with right now is that you might lose friends. Our society is really bad at empathy, plain and simple. We somehow lost the ability to share or even allow other people to have emotions and feel the emotions. We tend to want to fix them instead. We want to change the subject to get their mind off of it all. We want to keep them from hurting rather than allowing the hurt, which is a natural thing, to flow. And there might be people in your life who are extra bad at all of the above. And those are the ones you end up distancing from. And that's honestly a lot of what I'm going through. There have been people in my life that I did not expect to ever step up when my mom died, when Marley died. And then there are people that I really expected to step up that didn't, because they didn't know what to say. They didn't know how to handle it. They didn't know, what to do. Instead, they thought ignoring it was completely easier. And that's not the way that helps you, and that's not fair to you. But that's okay to acknowledge that it's not fair to you. You are allowed to acknowledge what you need and also why you need it. And you're also allowed to back away from those who do not make you feel safe during this time. And another experience that I've been having is that people are going to try to fix you. And this one ties back into the previous one. But here's the thing, you don't need fixing. You need to feel these feelings and let them move through your body and allow yourself to simply just be present in the moment. If you mask the grieving process, it's going to rear its head even harder. It's scary, but you need to listen to it because it's necessary. It is so necessary for you to begin the healing process. And there is nothing in the world that says you need to be fixed for showing emotion and for healing. And this next one kind of actually ties into what I was saying earlier, is that grief can be overwhelming. There are so many days where emotions can hurt or hinder you so much that you just, and I'll be frank here, you just feel like you cannot go on. Like, it is so much easier to just sit in bed because you don't want to get up. Brushing your teeth is so overwhelming at the thought of it. And those are the days that you really need to be kind to yourself. I've had a really hard time being kind to myself, honestly, and it's something I've had to work on because we're driven to do, especially as business owners, we're driven to do all of these things and to stay on a routine and stay on a schedule and make the money and all of these things and show up for our people. If you don't do that, then you're losing clients and you're leaving money on the table and all of these things. And there is no warning when overwhelm comes, and there is absolutely no fucking avoiding it. And those are the days you have to be the kindest to yourself because you deserve to be kind to yourself. When you're kind to yourself about the overwhelming days, you are so able to get through them just a little bit easier. If brushing your teeth is too overwhelming that day, then fine. Sit in bed all day. Take a day. Take 24 hours. Order in. Eat McDonald's fries in your bed. And I'm saying that because I've done it. It is okay. You are allowed. You are also allowed to find comfort in the most unexpected places. A shirt, a blanket, a room, a toy, a song, a place, a memory, a vehicle. It can be anything, and you will never know what it is until it finds you. And there can be some things that you will feel like you can no longer look at, or places you can go to, or even fathom thinking of. But the comfort comes in few but mighty places. My comfort went from when my mom died, and I don't know how my stepdad knew this, is her pearl necklace she wore on their wedding day. I'm gonna try to do this without crying. He sent me a whole bunch of her jewelry when I turned 30, and it included the jewelry she was wearing when she died. And that included her pearl necklace. And it's just this beautiful single pink pearl. And I put it on, and I have found so much comfort in wearing it since I did that. And I've been wearing it, I don't know, about a month, maybe 2. And when Marley died, the thing I found comfort in was her favorite ball. And there are some things that I still can't even look at because I will just bawl my eyes out. And there are certain things that we had to get rid of, like her bed. Whereas one of her other beds I put in my office for our other dog, Jubilee. And she uses it all the time. So that's like her comfort. People, animals, beings find comfort in all kinds of places. And there's nothing wrong with that because we all experience grief differently. And it affects us in such a different way than so many people talk about. And that's really why I wanted to do this episode, because we as a whole need to talk about it. We need to be about it. And we need to actually stop hiding it, because that's a lot of what we do. When my mom first died, that's what I did. I thought that's what you were supposed to do. And now I'm realizing that the more I talk about it, the more other people are seeing what they can actually do. And that, to me, is probably the most eye-opening part. I hope this was helpful. But I also hope this gives people an eye into the grief experience for someone who's going through it. So if you're on the outside looking in, I really hope, it helps you understand someone who is going through grief and who is going through, the experience and what they're going through, and maybe an insight into someone's mind. I'm not saying that I'm the same as everyone else, but maybe a few of my words resonate with your person that is experiencing what they are experiencing. So, that being said, I'm going to switch gears to something a little funner real fast, because I have my first Patreon shoutouts. And if you haven't heard, I have a Patreon membership, and I'll talk a little more about that later. But I have to give a shout out to Jasmine and Leah. Thank you so much for supporting me, supporting this podcast, and getting some really, really great nuggets of information with my masterclasses, with my Q&As, everything and anything. And I'm so excited to have everybody. And if you want to be a part of my Patreon membership, then head over to patreon.com/AsToldUnfiltered. And thank you for listening to another episode of As Told Unfiltered. I will see you guys next time. You've just finished another episode of As Told Unfiltered. High five! If you enjoy the podcast, please rate 5 stars on Apple Podcast. You can also find out more about anything you heard today on my website, kristenkubick.com/astoldunfiltered, including my membership. In my membership, you get 10% off all courses, monthly masterclasses, and even a group coaching Q&A session with me, where you get to ask me anything and everything about your business, all for an insanely affordable price. Check it out at patreon.com/astoldunfiltered, and I'll see you on the inside.